Hi, it's Mike Stevenson here. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the Logic App testing series. And we're going to look at an example where we have a workflow that has a condition in it and how we can test that. So over here in my Logic App project, so I've got this workflow with condition example over here. And I've opened that up on the screen and you can see that we've got a fairly basic workflow where we have an HTTP request. We then have a condition here, and we'll decide whether to go left or right down here based on that condition. And what we want to do in our test is we want to basically do an assertion to check which direction it went down. So if you notice here, I've got some compose shapes and some variable shapes on each side, and then we can return a response at the bottom. So if you see, the response will just return the variable that we set through the flow here. So we've got this variable called response. Now, if I go up to the condition for a moment and we have a look here, so what we're going to do is we're going to pass in the input message this variable property. And then if the variable equals left, then we'll go down the left-hand side, and if it's something else, we'll go down the right-hand side. Now you can see, if I just scroll down a bit here, in the request shape, we've got this JSON schema where we're passing in this direction parameter here. So fairly simple logic app. And if we're testing with the existing open source framework that I built a couple of years ago, we can trigger the logic app and we can use the run history and we can decide whether we go left or right. But that's obviously got it deployed in Azure already. With the Microsoft test framework, we can run this locally and test which direction we went without having to do those deployment steps. That's one of the big advantages over that framework. Now let's close this folder down and we'll go down to our tests here, and I'm in my Logic App test folder over here, which is the one that has all the unit tests in. And inside here, we're looking for this folder, which is the workflow with condition tests, are all within that folder. So here we've got a test that's been generated. So we've got my mock for the different actions in here. And then we've got this test class over here. Now, what I've done is I've created a different test method for whether you went left or right. So all of the code kind of up at the top up here, this is all the standard stuff that gets generated. And then I've basically added a couple of tests here. So we've got, if we take a look at the you went left test first, so we can see we're setting up the action for the HTTP trigger. So you can see here we've got the direction set to left. We then go down here and you can see this is the standard code for triggering the workflow. And then at the bottom we've got these standard Microsoft assertions about the test, the workflow being successful. We'll then go a bit further down, and I'm just going to modify these a bit so we can see the code a bit easier here. Okay, so what we're doing here is the first key bit is the actions we're going to assert is going to be the two compose shapes, the compose left and compose right, but they are actually children of the condition shape. So what I need to do here is get that condition action and get a reference to it, so that in the next bit here you can see I'm actually going to look for the condition for the compose left shape to have succeeded. So I need to reference the child actions of that condition action. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to test that the compose right shape was skipped. And then at the bottom here, you can see I'm checking that the response action succeeded. So as we go down the workflow, we're going to go down to the condition, we're going to go left, and then we're going to come out with the response. Now, at the bottom here, I'm also going to do an assertion of the response shape. So what you'll notice here is I'll get the response action, and then we'll get the output body from that, and then I can do a contains, and the response to the logic app workflow is going to return you went left. So we'll just assert that the body coming out was an example of you going left. Now, if we take a look at the next test, the you went right test, the key thing is we've set the direction to be right, and then really the test's just going to be the opposite of the one above. So if I move these around again, right, so you'll see here we've got so we've got the reference to the condition again. We then check the you went right was successful over here. We check the you went left was skipped. We've got the assertion on the response, and then here we get the response body, and we check that that contains the you went right value. So we basically have two tests. One, you go down one side of the condition, and the other you go down the other. Now, if we now go to our test runs here, and if we go to this workflow with condition, so we can basically test that, and we can run that test, and it'll go and basically double check both those conditions are fine. Now, the key thing to note here when we think about how we'd execute these real world tests when the logic app workflow is deployed, the challenge, in this case, it's fairly hello worldish, so it's quite simple to test in both scenarios. But often you're going to need a scenario where the external system you call returns specific data to drive the workflow going left or right. And often that's where the mock comes in, because it can be difficult to make the external system return the right value to drive the left or right condition. So here we can test both branches of that condition within the same sort of mock test setup, and we can be pretty sure that that workflow is fairly robust and solid. And then later on, our integration tests may not have to go into as much detail because we've combined good unit tests, and then we can do some integration where the other systems are involved. So hopefully that that video shows how easy it is to do a condition. Here we were looking at the child actions within the condition, and we also added the scenario where we can test the response action coming out and test the body of it. So thank you for listening to today's video.